Hello, lovely ladies, and welcome to Zion's Company of Women podcast. I'm Lana.
And I'm Courtney.
And it's wonderful to have you with us today. Good morning, Courtney. Good afternoon, good evening. I'll just cover every base.
Just hello. Hello,
Hello.
Lana. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm enjoying a nice cup of coffee.
Hallelujah.
The sun is shining outside. And it's a good day. It's a good day. How about you?
Good word. It is a good day. I'm good. I'm excited. I'm ready to get into our kind of this new series that we're going to jump into. This has been one that, you and I've talked about for a while now, but didn't really feel the green light just yet. Until now, I guess I should say. So, should I tell everybody what we're doing? Should I just let the cat out of the bag already? Because we've just been sitting with it for so long.
I think so. And ladies, let me just tell you, when Courtney messaged me and said, hey, the Lord's led me to this story and this is what I've been hearing and seeing. Oh my goodness me. Like it's a word. So I just want to say, get ready because I can feel God is going to do some great things. And we're going to take 5 or 6 episodes through this story. So yes, let the cat out of the bag. Courtney, let's dive in.
Okay. Well, we're just going to be talking about Jacob, and we're going to be talking about his Jacob's ladder encounter that he has there. And I'm going to actually read this first episode. I'm going to read the entire story. It's chapter 28, and it's going to start in verse 10. And I'm going to read it to you out of the Passion Translation. And I want to read it first off, just from start to finish, because the Lord does this funny thing with me sometimes where he'll show me a person or a chapter or an event in the Word. And it's like he zooms out just a little bit and he starts to show us different things about it's a roadmap that he leads you through, but there's a lot of things that he shows about himself and how he operates and his nature and his ways. And this just happens to be another one of those ones where he does this. So if it's okay with you, Lana, I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to start reading. And it's chapter 28, starts in verse 10, and it's going to go all the way through to the end, just before chapter 29 starts. So, okay, it's called, and I love the way that Brian Simmons says this in the Passion Translation. It's called The Escalator of Eternity, which is just incredible. It's so much better than Jacob's Ladder. It's the escalator of eternity. Yes, Lord, speak.
On.
Here we go. Take a ride. Verse 10, it says, Jacob left Beersheba and journeyed towards Haran. He encountered a certain place at sunset and camped there for the night. He took a stone from there and made it his pillow. Now, I don't know how many hotel rooms you've stayed in, Lana. I've stayed in some sketchy ones. But I can't say that I've ever used a stone as a pillow.
No.
But we'll continue. He took a stone from there and made it his pillow, and he laid down to sleep. He had a dream of a stairway securely fixed on the earth and reaching into heaven. In his dream, messengers of God were ascending and descending on the stairway. And Yahweh stood beside him and said to him, I am Yahweh, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. You are lying on the very ground that I will give to you and your descendants. They will become as numerous as the specks of dust on the earth, and they will extend their territory in all directions. Through you and your descendants, I will bless the whole world. Never forget, I am always with you and will protect you wherever you go. And one day I will bring you back to this land, for I will neither leave you nor fail to fulfill every word I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from this dream, he said, Yahweh is here. He is in this place, and I didn't realize it. Terrified and overwhelmed, he said, how awesome is this place? I have stumbled right in. This place is a portal, the very gate of heaven. Took the stone that he had under his head and set it up as a pillar and anointed it by pouring oil over the top of it. He named that place Bethel, though the city was once called Luz. Then Jacob committed himself to God, saying, if you will always be with me and protect me on this long journey, and if you give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and if I return safely to my father's house, then Yahweh, you will be my God. See, I have set up this sacred stone pillar, and it will be your house, God. I promise to set aside a tenth of all that you give me, of all that you give me as my gift to you. And it concludes there with that encounter. There's so much in this one story. I want to start, if it's okay, Lana, I want to just start at the top here and just say, Jacob, when he got to this place where he laid down to take a nap, he wasn't in the best circumstances. He had just deceived his father, and he was fleeing from his brother Esau. And so he's on the run. It's not like he finds himself in the greatest of circumstances, but that's what leads him to this place to begin with. And I've just really felt that, in the time that we're coming in, the time that we're in, dreams are they very much are a divine way of communicating with us. And I feel like it's one of those things where the Lord kind of cuts through a lot of the nonsense to speak clearly to us. Sometimes he has to knock me out. Like I have to be sleeping before I can hear clearly. And that's just life, but I love that this encounter came through a dream. That right there, automatically, that speaks to me, the grace of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think as well, Courtney, we talked, like I touched a little bit on this in our first episode, like the episode last week, about 2024 and it being a year really of divine intel as well. And I think that, I love that even in my own journey, a lot of the intel and revelation from the Lord has come in those night hours for me, like in those beautiful spaces of rest and sleep, and the way that he speaks. And there's such an incredible place of encounter that happens in that dream space. And even before we dive into like looking deeply into this story, I think this year, I think we're going to see an increase in dreams, and we're going to see increase in intel and the revelation that the Lord is releasing to his people. And I just want to say this, because Courtney, when you said that just then about dreams, immediately this word fell on me, and I heard the Lord say, there are some listening that in the last season, your dreams have been a place where there has been a lot of torment. There's been a lot of fear in your dreams. And I heard the words like night terrors. And I heard the Lord say, Lana, prophesy over them that in 2024, there is a turning of their dreams. There is a restoration of dreams that I am releasing into their life, that now that dream space is not going to be a space at night where you go to bed in a foreboding or you go to bed in a place of anxiety, but there is a rest and an expectancy that God is bringing you into, like a child of like, what are you going to show me tonight, Lord? This one awe. I really felt that, Courtney, when you were speaking. I'm like, and the Lord said, prophesy the restoration of dreams and the encounter with me in the dream space. So if that's you, I encourage you, receive it by faith.
Yeah, amen. Amen. I love that. And I love that from this place of dreams, encounter, and rest, like from that place comes that foundational establishing that we see that he does in Jacob. And then comes also this gateway and this portal that the Lord reveals to him and makes him aware of that's already there. And this is also the place where his identity begins to shift. Like his identity begins to become reborn, and he begins to become renamed. Because without this encounter right here, starting here, we wouldn't have gotten to the place where he wrestles with the Lord, and he's completely renamed. So this is the beginning of something very important. And
Oh,
I do want to say too, yes.
can I
No, go
jump?
ahead. Sorry.
No,
Go.
no, yes, sorry. No. Those words that just hit when you said, ladies, those words, Courtney, when you just said, this is the beginning of something important, I felt the anointing. And I just want to say, before Courtney even goes into what she's about to share, oh my goodness, I feel the weight of the Lord. This is the beginning of something important. This is the beginning of this life-changing encounter, this space, this season, this year. This is the beginning of a trajectory that is going to be off the charts. Like I felt it, Courtney. I had to stop you. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel the anointing on those words. Yeah. So keep going.
I love that. I actually want to start us, we're going to do, this series is going to be a couple episodes long, because the Lord showed me to break down the things that he revealed in the dream to Jacob about himself. But I think before we do that, before we get into that first part there, Lana, I want to talk about this place of his pillow and the pillar. Brian Simmons does such a beautiful job in the footnotes. And if you don't have the Genesis translation or the Passion translation of the Genesis, I highly encourage you to get it, because there's so much gold. I think there's more footnotes in there, about as much as space for footnotes as there is for scripture in there, because he's pulling out so much gold that's within it. But he goes back to talk about, Jacob putting down a rock, and that's his pillow. And he says in the footnotes, like, how many times have we been led to an uncomfortable place in life only to encounter the Lord? Have you said, looking back over your life, truly the Lord was in all I went through, and I didn't even know it? And he says, we often discover that he is where we do not think he would be. You may have a divine visitation anywhere. Ordinary places can become holy places. And then he pins this one line that about knocked me over when I first read it. And it says here, he builds a pillar from his pillow. He builds a pillar from his pillow, that hard place, that rock place, which for many of us can resemble rock bottom, but it's also the rock, which is Jesus. Like, from that place comes a pillar. And I sat with that, Lana. Like, that was all that I wrote, and I sat with that for a long time. He builds a pillar from his pillow, and from the pillar a city was renamed, and a city was born. And from that same place, a man began to realize who the Lord was. Like, there was a revealing that was happening there within Jacob. There was a portal that was clearly open, that had been established before him, but he was being made aware of what it was that was around him. And there's so much linked to this that has to do with territories and the spaces that the Lord puts us in, and the forerunners that have gone before us, but also the authority that we have to open up places with the Lord simply by being there. But I want to stay, excuse me, I want to stay just on this if I can for a while. He builds a pillar from his pillow. And what does that speak to you, Lana? Because I feel like I could sit with that for days.
Oh, my friend, I remember the first time that you shared that with me. I think I said to you, okay, I can't move now. Like, the weight of that one line it landed on me so heavy. And I feel like when you first told me that there was so much that came to me all at once, that I sat there thinking, this one sentence is multi-layered in revelation. Like, it is, there's so many layers of revelation from this. And I just want to say this, like, there is a place that I believe that God is bringing us into as the body of Christ, that is a place of rest in him that we have not entered into before. And I think that place of rest is very multi-layered. So I have, as I've sat with this, I have been seeing that there is a rest that God is wanting to bring that is in the form of refreshment to many that have walked through, excuse me, like really hard seasons. They've been really weary. They've had, really difficult times. There's this place of rest, that in this place of refreshment. Then I see that there's this rest that God is bringing that is the rest of faith in this place of like no striving. And then I see this rest that is being birthed in God's people that comes from, that's almost like a fruit of encounter. It's a place of transformation or a fruit of transformation that happens. And so I love this because I think right now, as I look at that, I see so much grace. Like I see so much grace in this space, and an invitation for us as God's people, that as we rest and we're in that place of encounter with Him, that place is a place of birthing. Like from that place, like I ascend, and from that place there's a birthing of what God has planned that takes place from that very space. I think it's really interesting that, in the Passion Translation, Courtney, that Brian uses that word pillow, because for me, pillow doesn't really speak anything else to me but a place of resting and a place of resting your head. And part of me as well, like when I think of rest, I'm like, yeah, that's where I lay my head to sleep at night. And I know this is crazy, and I'm not saying this is what's in the story. This was just my own ponderings. But I was like, Lord, that place of resting, like it's not my foot that's on the pillow, it's my head that I rest on the pillow. And there was something that God began to stir in me about my own thoughts, my own trying to work things out, my own like what goes on between my ears. Like there is a rest that God is bringing that happens between my ears, where I move further into the mind of Christ and this place of, I guess, laying down my own thoughts and my own like, you know what I mean? Like when we try and assume and presume things. There was just something, I know that's not what's in the story, but in my own pondering, I was like, no, it's actually my head that's on the pillow, not my hand or my foot. So anyway.
Yeah. I love that you said that. This is so good, because I'm going to read the footnotes to you again, out of the Passion Translation on verse 11. It says, Jesus is the anointed stone on whom we lay our head. To lay your head represents your thoughts and your dreams, and to lay your head on Him is to discover the beauty of God.
Well, there you go.
There it is. No, it says when the anointing of Jesus fills our head or our mind, we will see heaven opened with fresh revelation and perceive the visions of God.
Okay. You can't make that up, because before we record, I said to Courtney, I don't know where my Passion Translation is, so I don't have it. And she's like, do you want to go look for it? I'm like, no, it'll take too long. I'll just sit here with my New King James Version. Oh my goodness. I had not read that. That is amazing.
I love that. And I think that, Lana, I love that you were talking about rest too, because to me, I do think that when I think of pillow, I think of rest. It's where you're supposed to put your head down. And, if you have an uncomfortable pillow, you're not going to sleep well. So to me, I do think that represents rest. But I also see, like, this is sort of a journey that's just begun for Jacob. And it began with rest. It began in that place of sleep and of rest and of dreaming. And I really felt so strongly when I was pondering this and just sitting with it. The Lord said, Courtney, give me the margin. And He was really pointing out, like, if I can do this, if I can take a pillow and transform it into a pillar, what do you think that I'm going to do with your pillow or your margin that you give me? Come on. What might He birth within us as we allow ourselves to rest And I've really felt that. I felt that as the year has come to the previous year, 2023 has come to a close, very much felt him saying, now's a time to really rest. And I think that we sometimes I see that as being, we have a tendency to see that as being unproductive, but it's actually quite productive. It's quite purposeful when we purposefully allow ourselves to rest with him. Yeah.
Can I ask you, what does that look like for you? So when you're talking about rest, are you talking about physical rest? Are you talking about emotional rest? Like what type of faith rest? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. I think it's all the above. Because, I think sometimes living life in general, or if there's something that we're holding, sometimes if there's something that we're interceding for, it's just kind of something we continually carry within us. And after a while, you need to rest. You need to break from things. I have a tendency to think on something until I feel like I've kind of gone through it, and the Lord is showing me over the years that that's not always how he works. So there's that mental place of saying, okay, I am not going to think about this right now. I'm either coming to an impasse with something. I've thought all the thoughts I can think. And I just need to let this sit to the side for a while so that what needs to filter down into my spirit is actually being given time and space to filter down. I know it's that way with you, and it's definitely that way with me with revelation. Sometimes the Lord will give you a dream, or he will give you a revelation, and it's like, this is so much. And it's so wonderful. And there does come a time where you say, okay, I'm going to close my journal. I'm going to close my Bible. I'm going to put that there, and I'm going to go do the dishes. Or I'm going to go, hang out with my kids, or I'm going to go watch a basketball game, or whatever it might be. That place of letting something rest, because it's been sown. And I think that that's important too. When we think of rest, I think often maybe it's just the season that I'm in physically here, being winter, but that's the time for the ground to rest. And it's not unproductive. A lot of times we think of it as being unproductive because something's not actively growing out of it. But really what it's doing is it's allowing nutrients and things like that to filter down into it. The things that need to decompose that actually make the soil rich, all that's going on, under and slightly above the surface, but it's a rest and it's needed. And when we don't let those things happen, what we want to produce, we can't. So you were talking about grace, and I think that that's a huge theme, especially in this story, just the grace that comes with that physically as well as emotionally and mentally. I'm a mom of 4 kids, so I have a tendency to just get on my feet and stay on my feet, because I know for me, the way that I'm wired, I'm like, don't sit down. That's how it gets you, I'll sit down and then I'll think, 5 minutes, and then an hour goes by and I'm like, I should get up, but I just want to stay here and have another coffee. So it's allowing myself that permission to lay down. And even like miracle of miracles, something happened the other day. I was so out of sorts, and the Lord said to me, would you just go lay down? I was like, fine, because I'm not a napper. I don't nap. I'm not a great napper. My husband is great. Like, he can lay down and be out, and he's, wakes up super refreshed. And I'm the one that wakes up, my hair's all jacked up, and I feel like I don't know what year it is. So I tend to just not do that. But the Lord finally said to me, would you just go lay down? So I got into my comfortable clothes. I lay down, and miracle of miracles, nobody woke me up. Nobody for an hour. I woke up and I know, I didn't feel gross. I didn't feel confused. I was just awake, and I came out and I was like, this is great. Why don't I do this more often? I was nice to people after that, and just kind of set everything right in my world. But it's contrary, I think, to the world.
Yeah.
And what I kind of am used to. So I'm learning. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, it's mental rest at times. I'm not going to think about that right now. Sometimes it's emotional rest. If there's heavy things that you're plowing through. it'll still be there. Like take a rest for a little bit. Don't have to have it all figured out right away. And then there's the physical as well.
Yeah.
So.
I love that because there you go. It's 12:12 here as we're recording.
Of course it is.
Yeah, I love that, and I think especially right now, there are a lot of people who have been through a lot of very intense seasons, and I still going through very intense moments, and I know you and I have had, my goodness, a plethora of conversations about how rest is so on the heart of the Lord. And I really feel like, and I heard it while you were sharing too, like there is a holistic rest that God is wanting to bring. Like there's a rest of mind, there's a rest of heart, there's a physical rest, because there's been a lot of people who are feeling very depleted from the seasons.
Yeah.
They're feeling very weary. There's a lot of, I've been really feeling this word regret lately, like that there's a weight of regret that a lot of people are feeling that is draining the life out of them, that's causing them to feel very weary. And the Lord's wanting to lift off the regret and really bring his people into a place of rest. And I love in this story, Courtney, in the footnotes of this Bible, what did I say it was? New King James Version. Yep, Spirit-filled Bible. It says here in Genesis 28, verses 10 to 22. Where did I read it? Hang on, I think I've lost it. Sorry. Oh no, I read it somewhere. Here we go. Jacob's dream emphasizes God's initiating grace as I love this, as he assures him that he is the Lord of the past and the future. Jacob was the third generation to receive the promises of the Abrahamic covenant, not because he was righteous, but because of God's call and faithfulness to Abraham. Since Jacob had probably never heard God's voice before, the Lord identified himself by his prior relationship with Abraham and Isaac. And I love these words here, that he assures him that he is the Lord of the past and the future. And just as I read that, Courtney, there was this place of, I can't really even explain it, but it was like this exhale, this beautiful rest that I could feel in the revelation that that he is the Lord of the past and the future. The bigness, that's not how big God is. I'm like, that's not a word, but I feel like there's a rest even in the revelation that he is the God of your past. He is the God of your future. Like, this is who I am. I'm the God of the generations. Like, there's something about the revelation of how big God is. And to even think here where it says, since Jacob had probably never heard God's voice before, the Lord identified himself as by his prior relationship with Abraham and Isaac. I think there's a whole conversation in that.
Yeah.
That I love
there
that.
100% is.
Yeah.
And let's jump into that, because that's the first. So the Lord said to me as I was reading this, he said, I want you to notice what I tell Jacob in the dream, and I want you to number them. So go through line by line and number them. And one of the very first things that I wrote down, like number 1, he says, he tells Jacob who he is. He says, I am Yahweh. So he's introducing himself to him. And he's the God of, he says, I'm the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. And it blows my mind here because, and I think I said it earlier, we always know him as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But this is the and Jacob moment. We can't, it's important that we have the faith of mothers and fathers that have gone before us, that it sets an example for us. But this is the crux of the gospel, that it is relationally based. the Lord is one-on-one relationally based. We can look at examples and we can learn and we can glean and take from those things. But the heart of who he is as Yahweh is, I want to know you and I want you to know me. So I'm going to introduce myself to you.
Mhm.
And I love that this whole story of Jacob is Jacob coming into relationship with the Lord. Like you can read through his whole story and see the way that the Lord, I said it at the beginning, this is a starting point. Because from here,
Mhm.
the Lord speaks a word to Jacob. He introduces himself and he says, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. And then life happens. And
Mhm.
then Jacob goes through process, and you will see as you if you follow his story all the way through, you will see him wrestle with the Lord. You will see him take him in as his own, and you'll see his name change and shift. But this is the
Mhm.
beginning of the process. This is an introduction. And I really have
Mhm.
felt very much lately when I sit with the Lord and when I hear his heart, when he tells me how he feels about something or what he's seeing, his desire is that people know him for who he is. So it's
Yes.
important that it's pivotal here that he says, I am Yahweh. Like he is introducing himself to us. And to many in the church, he is introducing himself and reintroducing himself to so many people that they've thought they've had ideas that other people have stood in pulpits and told them about the Lord, that I will just be very honest with you, is not in line with his nature and is not in line with who he is. We've
Mhm.
allowed platitudes and little sayings and things like that to dictate or to filter, to be a lens through which we see and view the Lord. But the time that we're
Mhm.
coming into now and the time that the bride is in and the time that the church is in, we don't have time for the misunderstandings and the misthinkings of the Lord. This is a moment where he is coming in and he is, like we said earlier, he is aligning things, he is correcting things, and he is bringing them into order. But it begins first with who he is. So
Mhm.
it will be difficult for us to move forward in all of the things that Jesus comes and lays out for us to do as a church if we do not have a clear and accurate view and
Mhm.
understanding of who the Lord is at his core. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying we can't, but I'm
Mhm.
saying it's important that when we have that foundation, and this is a foundational thing, um, that enables us to be able to go forward in the things that in the development, in our own development, and then in the things that he lines out for us to do.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my goodness. You're reminding me, Courtney, of before I wrote my book, I hear the Lord say new era, and I was going through a series of encounters that the Lord was giving me, which then became the book. He said to me, Lana, there's a new era coming. He said, and when that new era comes, he said, I am going to reintroduce myself in many ways. And he began to go through different aspects of his nature that he was going to reintroduce himself in. And there were two kind of areas. It was either areas where he had been misrepresented, whether that was through teaching or through circumstances where his people had walked through things, and then circumstance and the enemy had really caused them to believe lies about the Lord and his nature, like he was going to correct those things. But there was also this place of like the reintroduction to his power, and places where the process had really just, people had felt worn down by the process and almost had forgotten, hey, this is who he is. And so that word reintroduction has been very strong, like in my heart and my spirit for such a long time. And I think it's absolutely I don't believe that there's, coincidence. There is God incidences, right? Like this
Yeah.
is appointed, this conversation for this time, because I really resonate with what you're saying. I believe that the Lord is really reintroducing himself to us in greater ways. There's a reintroduction to his power, to his love, to his nature. And really, you and I say this all the time, don't we? That if we really don't believe who he is at the core,
Mm.
like of us, and the revelation of his true nature, and what it says in the word of who he is, then as I go through storms in life and seasons in life, I am going to be shifted and moved by the climate of the season. So if I'm in a good season, I'm going to be happy, full of joy and peace, and I'll be great. But as soon as the storm comes, I'm not going to be so great because my roots aren't in the true revelation of the one who never changes. And I think isn't it interesting that when the enemy came to Adam and Eve, like he was like, did God really say, and that to me for so many years, as I've pondered that, I'm like, not only was the word of God questioned, but the nature of God was questioned in that moment. And I think that this story is so important in so many ways, but especially in what you just said, like that reintroduction to who he is and to his nature, and the fact that, like, I don't read anywhere in here that actually says that Jacob was actually looking for God, right? Like it doesn't, I don't read anywhere here that says like Jacob was searching out for the Lord, like God came to him through a dream. And so again, that really speaks to me of that place of grace. And then from that place, like Jacob is awakened to this like new reality, like, like talk about a whole new world. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I think even in this encounter, in this place of the revelation of the nature of God and the identity of God, I think there is a rest. Like, yes, Jacob goes on to wrestle with God, but I think every time we come into a place where we see him for who he is, we go deeper into that place of faith rest. We go deeper.
Yeah.
And from that place, then what is birthed and what is built, if I believe he's good and he's kind and he is Yahweh and he's the great I am, from that place, then things are birthed and built.
Yeah. And it's an ascension too. Like you've been saying, this is the year of accelerated and ascension. And I want to read, if I can, just the footnotes on verse 12 here, because it says, and that this is a really important point, I think, to make, especially as we're starting and in what we're talking about, the Lord revealing himself. It says the steps of the stairway. So the Lord appeared and Jacob he had a dream and he saw this stairway securely fixed on the earth, reaching into heaven. It says the steps of this stairway go up into the heavenly realm, where we're going to ascend here, where our true riches are found. Each step is a progressive revelation of God's purpose for our lives found in Jesus Christ. The stairway goes both ways, touching heaven and touching earth. Jesus Christ can be thought of as the stairway that reaches from earth, his human nature, to heaven, his heavenly nature. Jesus spoke to Nathanael using the same terminology. Jesus is the only valid entry into the spirit realm and the true way into the heavenly realm. By him, we ascend and leave our lower life. This Jesus ladder was filled with messengers ascending and descending. So then he goes on to ask, like, who are these messengers? And he wants to make note that to notice that they ascend first. It does not say that they were descending and ascending, which would be true if they were only angels in heaven. So if you ascend first, you are leaving the earth to go to heaven. These messengers may be people or divine beings. If people, listen to this, this is important. They are intercessors and promise claimers.
Come on.
The Hebrew word translated angel is malak, which can also be translated ambassador, deputy, messenger, or prophet. So it's just basically going on to continue. And there's a lot more in there where it talks about the angels and the overseers of churches. But I wanted to sit with that for a little bit too, Lana, because you've been talking about this being the year of ascension, with going up. And before we even recorded this this episode, you mentioned the verse, I believe it's from Hebrews, where it talks about women reaching up into the heavenly realms and pulling down those promises. So there is a place that we see here that the Lord is opening up permission and saying, hey, come on up here, get what you need and come down, bring it down.
Oh, every part of me wants to just jump up and down. Like you just, Oh my goodness. Like, yes, 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 and yes. Like, what you just said, the Lord told me, yes, 2024, he said it was restoration and the redemption of time. He said to me that it was a year of ascension, and he kept saying, come up here, come up here. And then he kept saying to me that it's a year of divine intel and intercession. And when I heard you speaking, like just then, Courtney, like it just all flooded back to me, because that, I believe, is what the Lord is speaking right now. Like, there is this place where God is inviting us to ascend. It's that place where we spoke about in the episode last week, the place of even Colossians 3 verse 2 that says, set your mind on things of above. The Amplified says habitually, right? Continually set your mind on the things of above. I love what Brian said about the promise claimers. Like, this year, I can't communicate it strongly enough how much I believe that God is causing us to ascend. It's from the place of rest. It's from the place of, as I see him and I'm reintroduced afresh to who he is, I am ascending to receive the divine intel that the Lord is wanting to release, to govern from the heavenly place, and then to bring the transformation to earth in partnership with the Lord. And I think it's really interesting as well. Like, I think this is going to be a year that we're going to see a lot of increase in angelic activity and angelic assistance on a whole other level. And I feel like there's this partnership that God is inviting us into in the ascension that is not only taking hold of the promise of what God has spoken and saying, this is going to be this is my greatest reality. This is my truth. And by faith, I'm going to bring this, like I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to stand on this, and I'm going to continue to live in that place of faith rest until it becomes a reality and my circumstances, my situation shift. But Courtney, again, I hear this invitation into seeing as he sees and really living from our seat. Like, I know that's not said here. Like, that's not part of this story, like in words, but I see this place of ascension from the place of rest, coupled with that place of Ephesians 2:6, where God is calling us up and out of things that we've walked through to truly begin to school us in a greater way of what does it look like to govern with him, and what does it look like to really live in that place of rest in my authority. So yeah.
I love that you said that about the angelic, because that's really been something the Lord's been leaning on with me a lot lately as well. And I had an encounter the other day, and I could see, or the Lord told me that there were angelic beings, that they were being released, but I could tell that they were coming in fresh. So they were refreshed. They had been with him fully full of everything they would need. And he said that they were reinforcements, that they were not only being sent, but they have already arrived. Like, they've been stationed. They're stationed where they're supposed to be. And yeah, he said it's not they're coming, it's that they've arrived. And he said that they're warriors, but they're full of joy. And after a while, he kept showing me that their numbers were triple what was originally seen and known. And that part of what they're bringing with them is they're bringing wisdom and battle experience, but they're also bringing comfort. So, and they're here, and they're close, and they're ready. So I'm not, we're just going to share that and release that for those that do encounter, that know what to do with it. I feel like there's going to be people listening that know exactly what to do with what I just said. And they're also, he did also say that they're here to herald and blessings with, and supply and abundance, that they're bringing reminders of blessings and promises that have been long held, and they're not far off. And it's particularly also around financial growth and blessing. So there's a lot of different things that they're here for, but they're here. That was a very clear. part of the message. They're here.
I love that. I had an encounter recently. I was in another state of Australia, and I was walking down the street. And as I was walking down the street, all of a sudden I looked and I saw all of these angels aligned on, like they were on the curb of like both sides of the street. And the sense was like they were stationed and they were ready. And I said, Lord, what are they doing? And he's like, they're here and they're ready and they're waiting on my command. And there was this such a strong sense of, you know what, like the Lord has things in place, and these angelic hosts, they were strong and they were gold and stately, and they were waiting on the Lord's command to then go and to do the assignment of the Lord. And I've told one other person about that. Like, so it blows my mind that
and
like
it was not me.
Yeah, and it wasn't Courtney.
No.
And so I'm like, this is so cool. Like, this is so the Lord. And I was thinking of that when you were sharing, Courtney, because I 100% resonate with what you just said. I really believe that is absolutely the Lord. And while you were sharing, I just saw something flash in front of my eyes, and I think it's in, I should have looked it up. I think it's in 2 Kings 6, I think, off the top of my head. But it's where Elisha prays for his servant, and his servant's eyes are opened, and then sees all of the angelic hosts and the armies that are surrounding them, and like, great, look how big the army is that are for us. And I felt like when you were sharing, that the Lord was really highlighting this place of vision again, and that he's really going to this year be not only he's not only encouraging us that there are angels and they are stationed and they're here and they're ready for like the command of the Lord, but to really be expectant to see the angelic assistance that the Lord has positioned into your life. Like, I saw the coupling of that the angelic assistance and vision coming together while you were speaking, Courtney. And I really think that this year we're going to begin to see with like heavenly vision and supernatural sight in a greater way, that yes, it may look like there's battle all around, but it's one moment of the Lord opening your eyes to see like the angels that are with you, or, you know, entertaining angels unaware, like all of those things. Like, I feel like as you shared, there's an increase of vision to see the assistance that is already sent in place for us. And that I heard the Lord say that the supernatural is going to become even more natural this year. That where we have walked years of like feeling like we're contending, and I don't know about you ladies, but some days I look around and I go, oh my goodness, all I see is the opposite of what God has said screaming at me, right? But I feel like this year we're going to see greater supernatural moves of his spirit and signs and wonders and heavenly sight to see those angelic beings, that's really going to draw us into that place of ascension in a greater way. That, oh my goodness, like there are more for me here surrounding my home than like, you know, the enemy that's trying to cause chaos in my living room. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes. And I love, you know, I read it earlier when I first read through it, and the footnotes here in verse 16, Brian Simmons writes, ordinary places can become holy places. So ordinary places can become holy places. And then right after that is when he writes, he builds a pillar from his pillow. So it's, you know, supernatural becoming natural. There's a lot of times where I think we dismiss what we think is just us, or it's nothing. And that's actually the prompt of the Lord. It's actually him pointing some things out or prompting you of his presence or what he's doing. And I've really felt lately too, like within the last couple of weeks, him just encouraging to practice. He just says, Courtney, practice my presence. So I'm standing there doing the dishes. I'm just tuning in and I'm becoming aware. Okay, Lord, I'm aware that you're around me. I'm aware that you're within me and you're in this space. And I think that there's something so territorial about that in a way when we become aware of who it is that's around us. I remember when I was a young girl, I went to an Episcopal church when I was a little girl, And I remember our priest telling this story one time about, I think it was this cross that they used to carry in the processional of all of the like choir and priests and things like that. They would carry this cross and walk in. And then when the children would leave for children's church, they would carry the cross and they'd follow it. And I'm pretty sure it was that. And he had to, something happened and he had to take it home. And he kept it in his like dining room or living room. They kept it there. And he talked about the effect that it had in the atmosphere in his home. And it wasn't the cross itself. It wasn't the actual instrument that was doing anything. It was what it represented, that it represented to them Jesus, the presence of Jesus. And he talked about what a shift it made in the way that they spoke to one another and the way that they showed up and the way that they just lived their daily lives within the kitchen and dining room and all different things. And that, even as a young child, that spoke to me. And I remember, being a little kid and like drawing a cross on my hand. And like, that was my, that was my sweet reminder of like, he's here.
Yeah.
And that just, I love that because I love what we see at the get-go of this story is a man becoming aware of the presence of God.
Yes.
And that starting what that starts an entire shift of a man's, all of it, his trajectory, the way that he behaves. I mean, just becoming aware of the Lord, becoming aware of his presence. So, yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap for today because I don't know how much further you can go without, just diving even deeper into the story. But that's what I mean. It's such a weighty and a pivotal place to be, becoming aware of the presence of the Lord, those ordinary places becoming holy places.
Yes. I love that, my friend. And, as I said before, I don't have the Passion Translation in front of me, but when you were reading those footnotes, the one sentence I wrote down was ordinary places become holy places. Like it just hit me so strongly. And that book by Brother Andrew, is it like Practicing the Presence of God? I read as a young girl and just completely changed me. So I totally hear that. Like that is so, it's so on the Lord's heart. And as we wrap up, I just want to say, Courtney, as you were sharing, I felt like there could be some mothers that are listening, and I kept hearing like this. It was almost like a thought, or maybe it's something you've prayed to the Lord, but just like, life is just, as a mom at home, like I'm not doing anything like major, like I'm here just raising my kids and it's feeling very ordinary, like the laundry and the laundry. The resurrection power, it just never dies. It just never stays dead. It's always coming back to life. But I really felt like there were some that were listening that were just like, like I'm not out there doing all the, I don't have a big platform or all of those things. But as you were sharing, Courtney, I just felt the Lord's heart so strongly to encourage those of you that are listening, whether you're a mother or you feel like, life is just, I'm not really doing much for the Lord. No. Like, look for him everywhere. Like you are powerful today, who you are, where your feet are placed because of the gift that you are, how he's created you, who you are, and the Christ that's inside of you. And I felt this invitation from the Lord as you were sharing, Courtney, to, as you look for him everywhere, expect those moments of encounter as you are playing with your kids and washing the dishes and folding the big copious amount of laundry that never dies. Like, look for him and expect him to speak to you. And I just, I felt that weight when you were sharing, Courtney, that God wants to really invade those moments.
Ordinary.
Some of my greatest encounters have been while I've played Hot Wheels.
That was going to be my question. I was going to ask you. just for fun, like where is the most, I shouldn't say bizarre, but where
Mhm.
is the most interesting place that you have ever encountered God's? I mean, He's always with us, but I think you know
Oh,
what I'm talking about.
yes.
Can you think of a place where you were like, this is bizarre, but here we are, and here He is.
Yeah, so there's two places. So one was a situation, the other one was an actual physical place. But I remember once many years ago, I was sitting asking the Lord for an answer to a particular prayer that I was praying and a question, and I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, Lord, please, no, didn't hear anything. So I got up and I thought, well, I'm going to go and I'll just play with Elijah. At that point, I think I only had Elijah, or maybe Judah was a little baby, but I only had two
Mhm.
kids. And I remember just being with Elijah and we're just playing, and all of a sudden he just turns to me and looks at me and says one line, and it was the answer to what I had been asking the Lord to do. So bizarre, out of the mouth of, he was probably 5, maybe 6, no more than 6 at the time, like crazy, like moment of like, oh my gosh, like this is my son sitting in front of me, but I'm actually encountering the Lord right now.
Yeah.
And to me back then, I was like, this is so bizarre. Like at that point in my life, I never would have expected it that way. Now I'm like always lit, like whenever my kids are talking, like they're like, Mum, I heard this. I'm like leaning in close. But back then I was like, oh my goodness, this so surprised me. But out of the mouths of babes, right? Like he gave me the answer to my
He nailed you.
question. He did. And since then, like I tell you what, the Lord loves my kitchen. Like I'll be washing dishes or
Yes.
cooking dinner, and I'm like, oh, I can hardly stand up right now because he's like downloading all of these things. Like he's just talking to me. And Lana, guess what? Do you want to look at what I'm dreaming about today? Come into my heart. Let me show you something. And I'm like, I've got a brown mince while I'm listening. Like this is but it's just
Yes.
it's about like how often, Courtney, do we say like we're looking for him, and we so are, and
Mm.
we're we're looking for him in every moment, and that is wonderful, and it's the place where our heart needs to be constantly positioned. But how cool is it to also be reminded that he's like,
Yeah.
hey, I know you're a mama of 4 kids, and I know you've got to cook dinner tonight, and I know you desperately want to spend time with me and you want to hear what's on my heart. So hey, surprise, here I am in the
There you
kitchen. Like
go.
he's always with us, but you know what I mean? Like he's
Yes, I do.
always with us. But yeah, just those
And
moments of
and
encounter.
I just You're absolutely right, Lana, and thank you so much for sharing that, because that just gives permission, I think, to so many people. And as you were sharing that, especially when you were talking about playing with Elijah, I think about what a beautiful picture that is. That's such a foreshadowing of
Yeah.
where the Lord brought you into, home, family, mothering, encountering the prophetic through that space. Like, hello, like that's like neon, flashing neon. And I think too, because there was a time of my life, and I just want to say, I felt the Lord say to pay attention to where you are when those things happen physically. Just like
Oh, I feel
Jacob was paying attention to the pillow and the pillar and where he was at. Pay attention to where you are when you encounter his spirit like that, because there was a season of time in my life where I was desperately needing the Lord and going through some heavy, heavy things. And the place where I would encounter him the most was my bathroom. And the majority of the time, my bathroom floor. Bathrooms represent cleansing and deliverance. And that was a
Mhm.
huge, huge theme in my life. It was a huge thing of what he was doing. If you're talking about your kitchen, what goes on in the kitchen, it's a time of preparation and of
Yeah.
nourishment and of gathering together family. And that's massively like the theme of what he's doing in your life.
Yeah.
And for a while, for me, it's been my closet,
Mhm.
which is that secret place, the pulling away. It's also the place where you keep your clothing. It's the place of your identity, where those things are
Mhm.
revealed. So ordinary places carry within themselves the message that the Lord's giving to you by the place that he's positioning you when you encounter him like that. That is a thing. So pay attention to it, and ask him. If you're not sure, ask him. And then there's just the random ones where I shouldn't say they're random, but there was one time we were shopping for a new dining room table. So our stuff got destroyed in the tornado, and we had looked all over, couldn't find anything with like real wood. Everything was like plywood, and Scott and I were like, this just feels cheap and it's going to break in a year, especially with 4 kids, like 6 months tops, with, missing table legs and stuff. So he said to me, excuse me, he said, let's go to the Amish furniture store. It's literally called the Amish furniture store. And he's like, let's look there, because I know that we can find something that's solid wood. It's of good quality. And I kid you not, I got like halfway into the store and I'm standing there by one of these type table and chairs, and the Spirit of the Lord hits me so hard. I'm holding on to a chair and I'm like, Lord, I can't go down here. I can't go like, back it up. Back it up, Terry. I just need a second, And it was just one of those things. And he spoke to me a word about the Amish and the things that he's going to be doing. But that was one of those ones where I was like, this is weird. It felt weird. Where I'm just like, hang on for dear life, Lord. But pay attention. That's all that to say. Pay attention to where you are when those things happen, because there's also a message in that.
I love it, my friend. And I love the way that you pay attention. You are so present to look for those moments with him. And I love that. I love it. I love that. Like when you share.
Sometimes I am. And then other times he has to whack me like 3 or 4 times before I'm like, oh, I get it now. But thank you.
My goodness. He is very kind. He's wonderful in all of his ways. Oh, lovely ladies. Another wonderful, wonderful time together. We just love sitting with you in this space. So thank you for joining us. And we're so excited to continue in this story and see what the Lord continues to unfold and draw us into. But this is definitely, I believe, a story and just a treasure chest of revelation that the Lord is really breathing upon now as we continue to journey into 2024 and into this new era. So bless you. Thanks again for being with us, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Hello, lovely ladies. It's Courtney from Zion's Company of Women podcast, and I want to thank you for all of your incredible support. If you've been blessed by the podcast and you'd like to see more content like this, please consider donating to support the Zion's Company of Women ministry team. Your donations make what we do here on the podcast a possibility. Just click the link in the podcast description for a variety of ways to donate, or you can donate via our webpage at zionscompanyofwomen.com. And while you're there, check out our upcoming events, as well as our brand new launch of Scribes of Zion and Zion's Company of Mothers. Thank you for all of your incredible support, and as always, God bless you.